Welcome back. YCN Sports Talk. Jeremy Stout, Brett Franklin, and we talked Sox on the field. But I know this is the big segment. Everyone's waiting to hear what Brett has to say. If you haven't heard it already on his radio show, and I'll probably provide the counterpoint. You know that. I'm the homer.
You're the balancer. Yeah.
Right. So let's get into this off-field stuff first. Price and Dennis Eckersley. We all read about that. We heard about that a few weeks ago, and now the new article came out kind of explaining more of the story. Now, I don't want to say this is not an issue, but how much of an issue, I think a lot of it has to do with media, building, but I know you have a different take. So let me have it.
Yeah, I just think it just shows a character flaw with this team. And, and we knew coming into the season who was going to provide the leadership, right? David Ortiz isn't there anymore, so everybody's saying Dustin Pedroia, or maybe it's Mookie Betts, maybe it's whatever.
Right.
Maybe even Chris Sale when they thought they brought him over. But I just think this goes to show you who this team really is. And okay, we knew the dust up with Eckersley and David Price, but until the details came out of the Dan Shaughnessy article earlier this week, I think it really settled in for a lot of people that David Price is just a jerk. Right. He's just a Class A jerk. And whether you like Dennis Eckersley or not, that's not the point. I think the way he went about bringing him on the plane in front of everybody and all the players and berating him when David Price, what have you won in your career? You have won nothing. Dennis Eckersley is a Hall of Famer. He's won a World Series. He's not paid to like you. He's a broadcaster.
Right.
He calls it at his
and that's the problem.
And that's what I have a problem with. And the other problem is that allegedly other players applauded on the plane. Dustin Pedroia, where were you? Where were you, Mitch Moreland? Where was the manager and all this? And I think John Farrell, I said at the beginning of the season, before any of this broke out, he can't communicate with his players. And I got a lot of flack for that. This shows. This guy the inmates are running the asylum. It's embarrassing what they did to Dennis Eckersley, and it's embarrassing that David Price still doesn't get what he did was wrong. He doesn't get it.
Right, because he hasn't, by all accounts, he hasn't apologized or anything's happened. Now, I'm not gonna play the other side because what David Price did was incorrect and it wasn't professional. But here's the thing: two things about that. When this came out, it was David Price was a jerk because he didn't like Eckersley commenting on what his stats were and how bad of a game. Now we find out he was maybe wrong, I'm not defending him, but defending a player because it was the Eduardo Rodriguez when the stat line came up and Eckersley said, yuck. So you have David Price defending a player. Not the right way to do it, no question, I'll give you that. And David Price has made his bed. He needs to lie in it. He has character problems. He deserves everything he gets. But if this was another player who did it, I think we would be saying, oh, what a great teammate he is. And I don't believe in that at all. I don't think David Price is a great teammate. So don't quote me on that, please. I don't think that. I just think that the circumstances, there's a lot going on. But here's the thing. I don't think, maybe the clubhouse is in shambles, but they're not at each other's throats. You see what I mean? It's almost like an us versus them in a bad way.
Right. But you could still hate each other and still win. Like, we've seen a lot of teams in any sport that have just been so dysfunctional, but yet they still win. You can have locker room tension, and it can simmer through the season, but at some point it's going to blow up.
Right.
And at some point, David Price is going to have another dust up with somebody, and if he's not going to be held in check, then what's to say he doesn't, do this again?
Do it again,
and again, to do it to a broadcaster where David Price, you have no business ripping a guy and questioning his credibility. You haven't won anything. So shut your pie hole and have somebody else do the talking. You can't talk.
Right. Well, that was the thing. Like I said, not defending David Price because he needs to do this in a better manner. He can go back to Eck and say, hey, listen, X, Y, and Z.
Behind closed doors.
Right, if he thinks it was inappropriate. And then it gets into the manager, and he should say some things, but then at some point these guys are adults. And, David Price was the most wrong in the situation. But you're right, Farrell has some, collateral damage, and Pedroia. And I think for as much as we like Pedroia because he does what he does, you said it, he's not a leader. He hasn't shown he's a leader. Red Sox are stuck with this team. Who leads in the future after this season?
I don't think anybody.
Does Chris Sale, was it this first year so Chris Sale didn't want to step to the front? Now he will? after next season?
Somebody's
does
gonna
Mookie
have to.
Betts? He's young, but does he come?
I'm worried about Mookie Betts and his being influenced by the other veterans. I don't really think there is a leader on this year. You might have to bring somebody outside the clubhouse who hasn't already been tainted here. But I'll tell you one thing: the manager has looked terrible in this. No communication skills in that locker room. This is just the tip of the iceberg, Jeremy. They may still win the division, but there's going to be some underlying factors I think that's going to hold this team from winning.
Yeah, it's going to be a rocky end of the season and possibly off season. We'll see what happens. He's Brett Franklin from ESPN Radio for the Upper Valley. I'm Jeremy Stout. We'll flip to the next segment. We'll talk some basketball. Lots going on. Celtics look like they're set for next season, but maybe the Eastern Conference is theirs for the taking. You're watching YCN Sports Talk.